My Nanaji, Arvind Kumar, formerly Mathur, was born on February 27th, 1939, and he grew up in an ever-changing India and world. The choices that informed his migration drew a wide range. His intellectual pursuits, for one, rejection of familial oppression, and position at the intersection of cultures informed his primary migratory decisions. I hope to articulate the unique nature of my grandfather's migratory choices, especially as influenced by his time away from home, return home, and final migration to the United States. I also hope to give the viewer context. What was happening in India at the time, what societal influences did my grandfather reject, and what did he continue to adhere to, and what ways were my grandfather's family outliers? First, my grandfather's family from the get-go was subject to change in a post-1947 India. He grew up as the son of a railway manager who carried the name Mathur, whose roots in the caste system traced to high-level accountants and intellectuals who served the royal families of India and subsequently the British Empire. My grandfather's childhood was defined by his father's work, moving to different locations subject to the anglicized ways of child-rearing and ever-distant parenting. The apparent opportunities given to my grandfather's family by the industrialized colonial railway system pitted them from the beginning at the crossroads of wealth, tradition, and colonial power. From family interviews and personal experiences with my grandfather, it was apparent that he felt emotionally distant from his father and family, and was subject to boarding school education at Scindia School in Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh. Now, although I say he was subject to this education, he also benefited from it, and that is one of the main dialectics I hope to encounter here. The distance from the family and traditional ways as caused by these distant waves of child rearing, as well as the opportunities given to my grandfather informing his future educational pursuits. My grandfather was a voraciously curious person. His intellect never let an answer be the final one, and this was the case in all of my interviews and time spent with my grandfather. He was a prefect in boarding school, the captain of the swim team, and completed medical school at Swaiman Singh Medical College in Jaipur, one of the first medical colleges in the area. Being part of the Mathur lineage meant that medical school, which I learned from my aunt, my mom's cousin Indu, which at the time did not bode as well as engineering, which his family had previously been involved in, was looked down upon by the family, actually. So this, from the beginning, was his own pursuit and his own curiosity. Nevertheless, he persisted in his connection with the medical field and did not let these pressures get the best of him. After completing medical school, his father died suddenly, leaving him in the wake of this tragedy as the eldest child in a certain way to care for the family and support the family. Now, although that happened, he still chose to go to England to complete his medical residency, due in large part from interviews to the apparent and growing scientific advancements present in the UK, as opposed to the relatively rudimentary system present in Jaipur at the time. Now, although the system in Jaipur was largely based on an English way of teaching medical training, it did not have the same technology or cutting-edge research that my grandfather was interested in. He was primarily interested in the study of otolaryngology and skull-based surgery and neurosurgery as well, which did not have much of an opportunity in India at the time because of the apparent need for much more basic levels of medical care to be achieved until that was able to occur. This was not to say, however, that my grandfather rejected his people or disapproved of Indian medical practice in its entirety. More to say that my grandfather was deeply curious, and in my mind, his curiosity led him to the UK, along with the many opportunities that were given to him previously. My grandfather was also a challenge to the traditional ways of teaching. His constant questions seemed to prove too overwhelming for his tutors, as well as his apparent distaste for the privilege given by his name. Now, his name was changed to Kumar, both as a way of rejecting some of the privilege, but as a way of providing for general support in a post-colonial world where that connection to the ruling class might be seen as a bit off-putting. Now, it was in England, and this was around 1968 or so, that my grandfather met my grandmother, Kathy Johnson, in Liverpool. She was the head nurse in the ear, nose, and throat ward at Liverpool Hospital, and her caring nature, fun disposition, and emotional attentiveness drew her to him. I also speculate that she, as a person of humble roots and learned empathy, was refreshing to him as an individual reared in a family often characterized by shame and disapproval. This being a kinship network that was formed whilst away from home. A large part of this period and of their courtship was their adoption into Christianity, which in my mind, I do not have full scope of, but I'm hoping to learn more about the roots of Christianity, because both my grandmother and my grandfather did not grow up in a Christian household. I can speculate that both of them grew up in an emotionally distant household, and struggled with what I assume to be a certain set of childhood traumas and disconnects that may have predisposed them to this change in spirituality. My grandfather, whilst away and exploring his passions, had the ability to bring these vulnerabilities out to a person who understood, a person like my grandmother, Kathy Johnson. My grandfather was in India from the late 60s until 1971, when he returned to India to support his ailing mother, as well as bring back with him the expertise in order to practice medicine in India. From letters, I gather that he was passionate about developing a medical practice in India that could take care of people the way that he wanted to, and was not solely focused on the ability to pay or wealth. A lot of this was drawn in from the growth of the NHS in 1940, around the same time, post-war, that allowed him to be able to move to England in the first place and to develop his education there. And that kind of public health system was something that he really appreciated. And he wanted to bring that same care to a lot of the people in India, or in his local area in Jaipur. He even said in one of his letters that he would provide low-cost care to underprivileged and the rich being subject to paying up their noses. In that same period, his uncle Raghu Sinha is getting economic prominence in the family after the shock of losing their father, and with that, their status in Jaipur society. His significantly younger siblings with that were also developing then, and he is there to support them. This was a struggle in the family, as he was conflicted in the fact that he was both subject to supporting the family as well as developing his own curiosities in his life outside of this traditional culture. This was an apparent time of conflict, though, with reports of stress-induced angina on the part of his mother, who severely disapproved of his relationship with my grandmother, and her ultimate demise in her late 50s, recently following his return to Jaipur. Throughout this period, my grandparents were discussing faith, dreams, and plans of marriage in their letters. My grandmother eventually came to India in 1973 and married my grandmother, coincidentally on the same day that his younger sister, Savita, is married to whom my grandfather chose. My uncle Raj is born in 1974 in Jaipur. His learning and relationships developed away from home similarly informed the dynamics with his family both at home and those who migrated. Pressures evident at the time in the 1970s America limited his ability to contribute to his family in the way that was expected of the eldest brother. So at this time, my aunt Savita, his younger sister, was already in the U.S. and to a certain extent gave him connections in order to migrate to the U.S. and begin his professional career there. Although he began in D.C. and then moved to New Mexico and Colorado before finally settling in Chicago, he was able to get a post at University of Illinois, Chicago. I speculate with a level of certainty that this was both the result of his incipient curiosity and rejection of expectations, as well as the experience and pressures placed upon him as the primary earner and the head of the household in a suburban Christian immigrant family. And this is a time, as we all know, where the growth of the nuclear family and the single earner suburban family was really strong. My grandfather, in his migration, acted, yes, in pursuit of academic ventures, research, and the furthering of community healthcare, but also in part of rejecting the malignancies of his family back home, and the expectations placed upon him that, in my mind, he saw as necessary, and yet competed directly with the pressures of the nuclear family in America. He did not have the ability to support his younger siblings financially in the same way that he would have in India. And those sorts of expectations were in direct conflict, especially with someone who was both in a different country as well as immersed in a completely different culture, in a different religion, and was had a multiracial marriage. So a lot of these influences draw together for me to create a really complex case study here, and I hope that in terms of understanding the multifactorial identities, we can kind of draw out what my grandfather's migration story meant. And I think it can really allude to a lot of the opportunities present in this liberal period of expansion, as well as the conflicting needs of culture and of family and of obligation that really created many of the conflicts that are present in my family and in my mind, many families and many immigrant families in the U.S. and in other areas. This story also connects to the expansion of medical students and medical practitioners from India, both in the UK through the expansion of the NHS, as well as in the US. So I appreciate you spending the time with my presentation, and I look forward to exploring this story more and going more in depth in this migration story and connecting this to more ideas. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.